All right, today we're tackling one of the weirdest, most fascinating mysteries in all of medicine, the placebo effect. I mean, think about it. How can a fake treatment possibly create a real result? Is this whole thing just in our heads, or is there something way deeper going on here? Let's dive in. So, take a look at these. They look like any other pills you might get from a pharmacy, right? But here's the thing. They have zero active ingredients in them. None. They're basically just sugar pills. And that's the big, giant question, isn't it? How on earth can a pill with nothing in it actually make a person feel better? That's the core mystery we're going to try and unravel. Okay, so before we go any further, we've got to make sure we're all on the same page. Let's get the definition down. What is a placebo, really? Well, the word itself is kind of cool. It's from Latin, and it means I shall be pleasing. And that's a pretty good description, because a placebo is basically any kind of sham medical treatment. You know, the classic example everyone thinks of is a sugar pill, but it can be other things too, like an injection of salt water, or even, and this is wild, a fake surgery where a surgeon literally just makes a cut and then sews it back up without doing anything inside. And just so you know, this is not some new trendy idea. People have been talking about placebos for ages. The term was actually being used in medicine way, way back in the late 1700s. Back then, it was for a medicine that was really just meant to make the patient feel looked after, not to actually cure them. So yeah, we've been scratching our heads about this for a long, long time. Okay, so that brings us to the million-dollar question. When somebody takes a placebo and says they feel better, is that improvement real? Or is it just an illusion? To figure that out, we've got to break down something scientists call the placebo response. Now, this next part is super important because we tend to throw these terms around like they're the same thing, but they're not. In science, the placebo response and the placebo effect are totally different. See, the response is any change you see after someone takes a placebo, but the true effect, well, that's what's left over once you've stripped away all the other things that could be causing that change. So what are these other factors? Well, there are a bunch of them. A really big one is a statistical idea called regression to the mean. Just think about it for a second. When do you go to the doctor? Usually when you feel absolutely terrible, right? At your lowest point. Statistically, you're probably going to start feeling a little better anyway, just because it's hard to stay at your absolute worst. That's regression to the mean. Plus, you've got other treatments going on, or sometimes patients just want to be nice and tell the doctor what they think they want to hear. And yeah, even the scientists running the study can have their own biases. This is exactly why a lot of scientists are pretty skeptical about the whole thing. There was this huge review back in 2010 that looked at tons and tons of studies. And what they found was that, for the most part, placebos don't actually change the physical course of a disease. They don't shrink tumors or kill viruses. But, and this is a huge but, they found a major exception. How people feel. Things like pain and nausea. Stuff that's based on your personal perception. And honestly, that's where this whole thing gets so fascinating. Okay, so maybe a sugar pill can't shrink a tumor. Fine. But the fact that it can genuinely make someone feel less pain, well, that is an absolutely real effect. It's an incredible peek into the power our minds have over how we experience our own bodies. So, if we agree that this effect on pain and other feelings is real, the next question is, how? How in the world does simply believing in a treatment cause a real change in your body? To answer that, we have to look at both the psychology and the biology behind it all. Okay, so there are two big theories that try to explain this. First, you've got what's called expectancy theory. It's pretty straightforward. If you truly expect that pill to get rid of your headache, that belief alone is powerful enough to make you feel relief. Then there's classical conditioning. Think of Pavlov's dogs. Over our entire lives, we've learned to associate the whole ritual of medicine, going to the doctor's office, hearing the pill bottle rattle, with the feeling of getting better. That mental link is incredibly strong. And get this. This isn't just some vague psychological thing. It's not just all in your head. It's actual chemistry happening inside your brain. When you believe you're getting relief, that belief can trigger your brain to release its own natural painkillers, chemicals called endogenous opioids. So, in a very real way, your brain is literally whipping up its own batch of medicine. And what's really wild is that all the little details, the context, the ritual, they matter a ton. Studies have actually shown that the form of the placebo changes how well it works. A simple pill has some effect, a capsule works a little better, but an injection, which feels way more medical and serious, that has the strongest placebo effect of all. It's like our brains are thinking, wow, this is a big deal, so it must be powerful. Oh, but it gets even weirder. Taking 2 sugar pills works better than taking 1. The effect is stronger when the doctor giving it to you is warm and seems to really care. If you're an optimistic person, you're more likely to feel the effect. Heck, even the color of the pill can make a difference. It's amazing. But here's the thing. This incredible power of the mind, it's not always a good thing. For every placebo, there's a kind of evil twin, the nocebo effect. So if placebo means I shall please, then nocebo, you guessed it, means I shall harm. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when a patient's negative expectations, like if a doctor warns them a sugar pill might cause a headache, actually makes them get a headache, even though the pill has nothing in it. And the nocebo effect can be shockingly powerful. There was this huge study, the Women's Health Initiative. A group of women in the study took a placebo for, on average, more than 5 years. When the study was over and they stopped taking the fake pill, almost 5% of them reported having moderate to severe withdrawal symptoms. Think about that. Their minds were so convinced they were on a real drug that stopping it caused a real physical reaction. So the takeaway here is pretty clear, and honestly, a little unsettling. The mind's power over the body is a total double-edged sword. Belief can absolutely help you heal, but it can also just as easily make you feel sick. So with this incredible power, for both good and for bad, you can probably see where this is going. We're now wading into some really murky ethical waters about using placebos in actual medicine. This quote from a UK committee really nails the core problem. I mean, modern medicine at its heart is built on the idea of informed consent. You have the right to know what's being done to your body. But for a placebo to work, it usually requires, well, deception. And that's a direct clash with a patient's fundamental rights. And you can see how this puts doctors in a really tough spot. On the one hand, a placebo can give a patient real relief from symptoms like pain. The whole ritual of care can be healing. In fact, one survey found that 60% of doctors in Israel admitted to using them. But the flip side is huge. It's deceptive. It can completely wreck the trust between a doctor and their patient. And even worse, what if it masks the symptoms of a serious disease and delays a real diagnosis? This whole ethical mess isn't just for doctors' offices either. It's a huge deal in medical research. You see, clinical trials, the way we test new drugs, they depend on placebos to see if the new medicine actually works. But that raises a massive question, doesn't it? Is it morally okay to give a sick person a sugar pill when there might be a real treatment that could help them, all for the sake of a scientific study? Which leads to a really interesting, kind of forward-looking idea. Maybe the goal shouldn't be about fooling patients with sugar pills. What if instead, doctors focused on harnessing the power of the placebo effect? You know, that positive attitude, building a great relationship with the patient, the whole ritual of care. What if they used all of that to make real medicines even more effective? When you boil it all down, the placebo effect really forces us to look at this incredibly deep, mysterious connection between our minds and our bodies. It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that what we expect, what we believe, how we feel, it all has a direct physical impact on us. And that leaves us with one last, massive question to think about. Just how much of our own health is really under our control?